or you'll need a couple bits. So one 1/8 inch drill bit and one 3/32 drill bit, and then one number 2 Robertson and one number 1 Robertson. You'll also need an impact driver and a drill. I'm just going to go over an inventory of all the pieces you should have received. So every piece should be labeled, and the boards will have a mark on one end. So for the perimeter, we have 4 boards for the front and the back, 2 at the back, 2 at the front. Those are labeled A. Then there'll be one on the end of the court. That'll be labeled B. Then you'll have a large platform and a smaller platform. And then there'll be a couple pieces of 1/2 inch plywood, one labeled T for the small platform, another labeled S that will go along the end of both platforms, and then another labeled Q which closes off the end of the larger platform. Then in the middle we'll have 2 pieces labeled G, which are the dividers in the middle. So G and G. And then there'll be 4 angled blocks, 2 for each divider. Then near the river section, there'll be a short piece and a long piece, one labeled P, one labeled O. And then you should have received also a couple packages wrapped the coroplast. There'll be a package for the river. There'll be a package for the deep pit mine. And there'll be a package for the shallow pit mine. You'll also receive a bag of fasteners. There'll be a bag inside of 3-inch screws for fastening the perimeter and the platforms. And then there'll be a bag of 1.5-inch screws for attaching the plywood to the sides. And then a little wrapped package of number 6 by 1.25-inch screws for assembling the drop-off points on the other end. You'll also have a package of 1-inch steel bearing balls, a package of foam golf balls, and a package of copper pipe in 2-inch lengths. And then the last pieces on the other end will be a package of 1/2-inch by 1/2-inch square dowel for the drop-off areas on either end, and a roll of painter's tape for taping out the starting position. So we'll start off with attaching the small platform to the large platform. So first off, you'll want to take the small platform and slide it to line up with the large platform on the outside edge so that it's flush. Once it's flush, you can grab your drill, and on the inside in the pit area, we'll drill 2 holes on either end and then fasten it in with the 3-inch screws. Next, we'll attach the perimeter boards. First, we'll start with one of the piece A and attach it to the side of the lower platform. Again, we'll want to make sure it's lined up flush with the end of the platform. And we'll grab our drill and drill 2 holes on either end and 2 in the middle. Come back and start at this end just to make sure that this hasn't moved and it still remains flush. And when fastening the screws in the middle, this will be near the pit area. Make sure not to fasten the screws too deep, as they will stick out into the pit area if the screws are driven too deep. Next, we'll attach another piece labeled A on the other end of the platforms. Again, we'll line it up flush with the end of the platform and put 2 screws in the first and the end, and then 2 in the middle and 2 at the end as well. When fastening the middle screw, you'll want to make sure that the area in between stays at 16 inches, as that is the width at the other end. The platform may have a little bit of flex to it, so just make sure that it's close to 16 inches. Now we'll join the 2 remaining pieces labeled A to the other pieces labeled A that we just attached to our platforms. So near the middle of the court, we'll grab the other piece labeled A and we'll join it to our other A piece. So for this one, we'll have to take the drill and about 1.5 inches back from the joint, you'll want to get your drill started, pointing downwards, and then once it starts to grab, angle it at about a 45-degree angle, and remember to keep your other hand back from it, as in case you slip or the bit comes out the side that you're not going to get your hand. Then we'll take a screw and fasten the 2 together. We're on the other side of the court now, and we'll be joining piece A and piece A as we did on the other side. Now we're at the opposite end of the court, and we'll be taking this piece labeled B to close in this end. So at the corner, we'll take piece B and butt it up against piece A. We'll take our drill and drill through piece B into A. Fasten them together with the 3-inch screws. Then we'll repeat the same process on the other end of the board. Now we'll be fastening the boards to form the river area of the court. We'll start off by grabbing the small one labeled P. We'll take it down to the other end and butt it into the platform and mark a line on the end of the board and put an X on the opposite side. Then we'll grab the long board labeled O and do the same thing, butting it into the perimeter board marking a line, but then with this one, we'll put the X on the other side. Then we'll fasten these two boards together, similar to how we did the perimeter boards. Taking your drill through piece O into piece P. Then we'll fasten it together with two 3-inch screws. Once these two boards are fastened, we can line it up with the marks that we previously made. We'll start with the short end. We'll fasten this board into the platform, similar with the middle section. We'll take our drill and about 1.5 inches in from the end of the board, we'll start our drill facing down and then angle it in at a 45-degree angle, making sure that our board stays along that line that we drew. And then we'll fasten it in with one 3-inch screw. Then we'll come to the other end. We'll make sure to line up our board with the line that we made, covering the X. We'll take our drill and drill 2 holes, fasten with 2 3-inch screws. Now for the pieces labeled G, these will be the inside partitions. We'll take our tape measure and at the top end of the court, near the middle joint that we had in the boards, we'll run our tape down and butt it into the end of the court and take our pencil and mark at 99 inches and 100 inch and a half. Then we'll come down near the other end of the board and do the same thing but marking on the floor at 99 and then again at 100.5 inches. Now that we have our marks laid out for where this board will go, we'll take piece G, stand it up on edge, and butt it into the perimeter board where our marks are. Then again, we'll take our drill and drill 2 holes through the perimeter into piece G. And then fasten with 2 of the 3-inch screws. So before we install our angle pieces to hold piece G, we'll want to go make sure that our board is at our marks on the floor. We'll line it up on our marks and either just put a little weight on it or have someone hold the end so it doesn't move on you while you fasten in these angle brackets. So for fastening these angle brackets, we'll just put them into the corner until both angles are flush with the perimeter board and piece G. We'll take our drill and about 1.5 inches in from the end of the board and the top of the board, then we'll take some 3-inch screws and fasten it in. And when you do the screw going into the perimeter board, make sure again that you don't put it too near the end, as it may pop out the back side of the perimeter board. So just make sure that it's either angled inwards or that the screw is moved in further. And before we go to fasten the other side, just double check our marks on the floor, that it hasn't moved. Ours is good, so we'll proceed to fasten the other side in the same manner that we fastened this side in. Now for the other partition board, we'll measure it out in the same manner, butting our tape into the end of the port. But this one we'll mark at 67.5 and then at 69. Then we'll move down to the other end of the board, butter tape into the end, mark at 67.5 and 69. Then again, similar to the other one, we'll take piece G, bring it up to our mark, and then fasten it the same as the other set. Now we'll take our 1/2-inch plywood strips to form the sides of the platforms. First, we'll start off by the lower platform. We'll grab a piece labeled T. This one will sit on top of the perimeter board, flush with the end of the platform. Here we'll take our 1.5-inch screws and put 2 at this end, 1 near the bottom, 1 near the middle, just making sure that you stay below the floor so that it grabs and you don't pop a screw out above. To the end. And here, there's not the high platform to fasten into, but there'll be 3/4 inches of the plywood from the top of the platform that will put a screw near 2/3 of the way down, and then again at the end of the platform. Now we'll take piece S and fasten it to the side of the platform, similar to the first one, but since this one doesn't have a perimeter board underneath, we'll take one of the screws and go to the far end and where the joint is between the two boards, we'll just put a screw in partial just to hold the sheet while we fasten the other end. So just about sticking an inch out. So now we can take piece S, we'll lift it up, rest it on the screw at the end, we'll line up the bottom with the joint. Make sure it's flush with plywood on this side. Then we'll take our 1.5-inch screw and fasten it in. Then once you have the two ends fastened, you can put another 2 screws in the middle and then a quarter each way. And then for our last piece of 1/2 inch plywood, we'll take piece Q, rest it up on the perimeter board, make it flush with our sheet on the end. Take 2 of your 1/2 inch screws, or 1.5 inch screws, sorry, and fasten it in. And this sheet sticks past the platforms, so you won't want to put a screw right near the end because it won't catch anything. So you'll have to move in a little bit. Now you'll want to switch to the smaller 3 30-second drill bit that I talked about at the beginning of the video. We'll take that in our drill, and near the top edge of the 2 corner sheets of plywood, we'll bring them together flush, and we'll take that drill bit about 1 inch down from the top. We'll line up flush and drill. Then we'll take our impact and switch it to the number 1 Robertson that I talked about again at the beginning of the video, and grab one of your number 6 1.25 inch screws in the small package and fasten the corner. Then we'll repeat the process that we did on this corner at the other end. Now for the drop-off zones at this end of the court, we'll go over how to assemble your 1/2 inch dowels together. So for the larger area, you'll take piece DO1 and DO2. First, take DO2, and as we did with the river area, we'll take that piece, butt it into the end, and make a mark, putting an X on the side underneath the board, and then grab DO1, the short piece, we'll butt it into the end, make a mark, and then put an X on the outside. Then to fasten these together, we'll take our drill with the 3 30-second drill bit. We'll butt the long one into the end of the short one, so that'll be DO2 butting into DO1. And if it's too difficult to get your drill down on the edge there, you can always prop it up on the corner of the court. Here we are on the corner. We've got our piece DO2, the long one, and DO1. We'll take our drill bit, then we'll grab your number 6 1.25 inch screw and fasten the 2. Once you have your marks on your perimeter boards and your 2 pieces fastened together, you'll take some of that painter's tape that was shown earlier in the video. You'll grab the short length of it, line up your piece with the mark covering the X, and just tape the end down to the floor, and then we'll repeat the process on the other end. Line it up to your line covering the X, and tape it down. Next, we'll be fastening together the other smaller drop-off zone for this corner of the court. You'll need 2 pieces labeled S2 and 2 pieces labeled S1. So for this, again, we'll fasten it together in the corner of the court. You'll take one S1 and one S2. S2 is slightly longer than S1. So that one, S2, we'll take and butt it into the end of S1. And similar to before, we'll line up, make it flush, grab our drill bit, we'll repeat it for the 4 corners, just making sure that S2 is opposite to the other S2 and S1 to S1 so that you end up with a perfectly square piece. Next, we'll measure out for the placement of the drop-off zone that we just constructed. So again, we'll butt our tape measure into the corner, come about 6 inches out, and then you'll make a mark at 6 inches, and then come down about a foot, the width of our square, make another mark at 6 inches, and then repeat the same process but off the other side of the perimeter. Then we'll grab our square, line it up with our marks, starting in the corner. We'll take our tape, we're going to tape off an area for the starting location. For that, we'll grab our tape measure, and near the perimeter board, we'll butt our tape near the corner. We'll make a mark at 32 inches. Then we'll come back about 30 inches. Just kind of visually mark where it's at. We'll turn our tape. Mark again at 32 inches. Then I'll just lay my tape out so I know how long of a piece of tape to put down. So we'll place the piece of tape on the outside of our marks that we made. Then we'll move to the other side, and in the same fashion we'll measure from the corner, this time to 62 inches, make a mark, and we'll come back to about 30 inches. We'll make another mark at 62. And then again on this one, we want to make sure our marks are to the inside of the area we're taping. Now, your measurements in between should be 30 inches. And we're making a 30 by 30 inch square. So then we'll take our tape this way. You can make a mark at 30 inches on the tape. And again on the other side. For the final stage of setup, you'll have to place your mining materials in each bag. according to your competition scopes in the deep pit mine and the shallow pit mine. So make sure you do that before placing the material over top of the mines. For that, you'll receive a package like these, one for the river pieces, another package for the shallow pit mine, and then another one for the deep pit mine.